Hello guys, welcome to another video, and this video we will talk about carbohydrates. What is a carbohydrate? These are biological molecules made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in a ratio of roughly one carbon atom C to one water molecule, the H2O. This composition gives carbohydrates their name. They are made up of carbon, or carbo, plus the water, or hydrate. That you put it together, that is the carbohydrate. Carbohydrate chains come in different lengths, and biologically important carbohydrates belong into three categories. And these are monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. In this, we will tackle more about each type of carbohydrates, about the three categories that I mentioned, the mono, di, and polysaccharides, as well as the essential energetic and structural roles they play in other organisms in the human. First, we will go to monosaccharides. What is monosaccharides? Mono means one, saccharide, sugar. That means only one sugar in monosaccharides. Monosaccharides are simple sugars, the most common of which is glucose. Monosaccharides have also a formula of CH2O, and they typically contain 3 to 7 carbon atoms. Most of the oxygen atoms in monosaccharides are found in hydroxyl groups, or the OH groups, but one of them is part of a carbonyl group. The position of the carbonyl group can be used to categorize the sugars. It depends on how to categorize the sugars. There are two. If the sugar has an aldehyde group, meaning that the carbonyl C is the last one in the chain, it is known as an aldose. That's the first. Second, if the carbonyl C is internal to the chain, so that there are other carbons on both sides of it, it forms a ketone group, and the sugar is called ketose. And now you know. The sugars are also named according to their number of carbons, but some of the most common types are triosis, or three carbons. There are, because of trio means three carbons. Pentosis, 5 carbons, and hexosis is 6 carbons. One important monosaccharide is glucose. The glucose and its isomers. A 6 carbon sugar with the formula of C6H12 and O6. That is, we will go to the glucose and its isomers. Other common monosaccharides include galactose, that which forms part of lactose, the sugar that is found in milk, and the fructose that is found in fruit. Glucose, galactose, and fructose have the same chemical formula, which is the C6H12 and O6, but they differ in the organization of their atoms, making them isomers of one another. while the fructose is a structural isomer of glucose and galactose, meaning that its atoms are actually bonded together in a different order. While the glucose and galactose are stereoisomers of each other, there are atoms are bonded together in the same order, but they have a different 3D organization of atoms around one of their asymmetric carbons. As you can see in this picture, the diagram as a switch in the orientation of the hydroxyl group marked in red. This small difference is enough for enzymes to tell glucose and galactose apart, picking just one of sugars to take the part in chemical reactions. Um, we will go why the sugar forms in rings. That you have may notice that the sugars we've looked at so far are linear or straight chains, because that is what I researched earlier. That may seem odd because sugar are often drawn as rings. As it turns out, both are correct. Many 5 and 6 carbon sugars can exist either as a linear chain or in one or more ring-shaped forms. These forms exist in equilibrium which other but each other, but equilibrium strongly favors the ring forms, but particularly in aqueous oh, but it is particularly in aqueous or water-based solution. And that even when glucose is in a six-membered ring, it can occur in two different forms with different properties during ring formation. The O from the carbonyl, which is converted to a hydroxyl group, will be trapped either above the ring or on the side or the same side as the CH2OH group, or below the ring on the opposite side from this group. When the hydroxyl is down, glucose is said to be in its A form or the alpha form when the hydroxyl is down. When it's up, on the other way around, glucose is said to be in its beta or B form. Next, we will go to saccharides. What is disaccharides? Di means two, and, and saccharide means sugar, and there are two sugars, meaning disaccharides form when two monosaccharides join together via a dehydration reaction, also known as condensation reaction or dehydration synthesis. That in this process, the hydroxyl group of one monosaccharide combines with the hydrogen of another that releases a molecule of water and forming a covalent bond known as a glycosidic linkage. That as you can see in the diagram, the glucose and fructose monomers combining via dehydration reaction to form a sucrose. The saccharide we know as a table sugar. The reaction also releases a water molecule that in some cases it's important to know which carbons on the two sugar rings are connected by a glycosidic bond, because each carbon atom in a monosaccharide is a given number, starting with the terminal carbon closest to carbonyl group, which when the sugar in is in its linear form. There are common disaccharides that includes lactose, maltose, and sucrose. The first is a lactose. A lactose is a disaccharide consisting of glucose and galactose and is found naturally in milk. That many people can digest lactose as adults, resulting in lactose intolerance. That which of you and your friends or your friends may be all too familiar with. The second is maltose or malt sugar is a disaccharide made up of two glucose and molecules. And the last is that the most common disaccharide is sucrose or the table sugar, which is made of glucose and fructose. And the last is a polysaccharide. What is poly? Poly means many. There are many sugar present. A long chain of monosaccharides linked by a glycosidic bonds is known as a polysaccharide. The chain may be branched or unbranched and may contain different types of monosaccharides. The molecular weight of a polysaccharide, because I searched it earlier, can be quite a high, reaching 100,000 thousands daltons or more if enough monomers are joined. Starch, glycogen, cellulose, and chitin are some major examples of polysaccharides important in living organisms. Um, we will go the storage of the polysaccharides, um, because the starch is stored from of sugars in plants and is made up of a mixture of two polysaccharides, the amylose and amylopectin, that they are both polymers of glucose. Plants are able to synthesize glucose using light energy gathered in photosynthesis by the sun and the excess glucose beyond the plant's immediate energy needs is stored as starch in different plant parts, including roots and seeds. The starch in the seeds provides food for the embryo as it germinates and can also serve as a food for humans and animals that who will break it down into glucose monomers using digestive enzymes. In the starch, the glucose monomers are in the A form, which is the alpha form, that with the hydroxyl group of carbon one staying down below the ring, and they are connected primarily by 1 and 4 glycosidic linkages, that the linkages in which carbon atoms that 1 and 4 of the two monomers form a glycosidic bond. The first is uh, differences about amylose and amylopectin. The first is amylose is that consists entirely of unbranched chains of glucose monomers connected by 1 and 4 linkages. 1 to 4 linkages, while on the other side, the amylopectin is a branched polysaccharide. Although most of its monomers are connected by 1 to 4 linkages, additional to 1 to 6 linkages occur periodically and may result in branch points. Because of the way the subunits are joined, the glucose chains in amylose and amylopectin typically have a helical structure, as you can see in the diagram. That that will be great for plants, but what about the glycogen. The glycogen is the storage form of glucose in humans and other vertebrates, like the starch. Glycogen is a polymer of glucose monomers, and it is even more highly branched than amylopectin. The glycogen is usually stored in liver and muscle cells. Whenever blood glucose levels decrease, the glycogen is broken down via hydrolysis to release glucose monomers that cells can absorb and use. And we will go the structural of polysaccharides, because polysaccharides is many sugar that forms. Although energy storage is one important role for polysaccharides, they are also crucial for another purpose, that they are providing structure. The cellulose, for example, is a major component of plant cell wall, which are rigid, cannot be bent structures that enclose the cells and that help make lettuce and other veggies crunchy. Wood and paper are most of cellulose, and cellulose itself is made up of unbranched chains of glucose monomers linked by 1 to 4 glycosidic bonds. Unlike amylose, the cellulose is made up of glucose monomers in their B form or the beta form, and this gives it very different properties. As shown in the figure, on the figure, as you can see in the screen, every other glucose monomer in the chain is flipped over in relationship to its neighbors, and this results in long straight non-helical chains of cellulose. These chains cluster together to form parallel bundles that are held together by hydrogen bonds between hydroxyl bonds. That this gives cellulose its rigidity and high tensile strength, which are important to plant cells. The beta glycosidic linkages in cellulose can't be broken by human digestive enzymes, so humans are not able to digest cellulose. That's why, not to say that cellulose isn't found in our diets, it just passes through as an undigested insoluble fiber. However, some herbivores such as cows, koalas, buffaloes, and horses have specialized microbes that help them process cellulose. These microbes live in the digestive tract and break cellulose down into glucose monomers that can be used by animal. The wood-chewing termites also break down cellulose with the help of microorganisms that live in their guts. The cellulose is specific to plants, but polysaccharides also play an important structural role in non-plant species. For instance, the arthropods, or such as insects and crustaceans, have a hard external skeleton called the exoskeleton, which protects their softer external body parts. That this exoskeleton is made up of the micromolecule, the chitin or the chitin. I don't know what is the correct pronunciation, but which resembles cellulose, but it's made out of modified glucose units that bear a nitrogen containing functional group. Chitin is also a major component of the cell walls of fungi, which are neither animals or plants but form a kingdom of their own. And that is for all the topic of the carbohydrates, and I hope you understand my explanation. And that is the topic for the carbohydrates.